Well, welcome. I appreciate you guys taking time out of your day today. Hopefully you're enjoying the lunch. My name's Dave Fore. I'm the account exec for Sophos for Arizona and Nevada. Those are the only two places I cover. And interestingly, I don't know if you guys deal, when you deal with, I'm sure you all talk to IT reps, guys who are selling you stuff or trying to sell you stuff all the time. Most of them deal with customers only. And I have a unique position, at least as the way our industry is set up, and I love it. I've been here 7 years and been doing this 5 of the 7 years, where I'm responsible for all customers that are headquartered in Arizona and Nevada, but I'm also responsible for the partners. So when I started talking to Anthony, you know, it's been a goal of mine to get into phoenixNAP for a lot of years, to talk to them about looking at Sophos as a product set that they can use to help protect their internal environment, their internal network. I have a couple of data center customers other than these guys, and I always wanted to talk to them about that. But when Anthony called me and said, hey, we're thinking about starting an MSSP, we're starting an MSSP practice, and we need to start looking at what solutions are going to be the backbone of that practice. That was really exciting to me, both you know, from a customer standpoint, it's great to have phoenixNAP as a partner, but as a partner, it's even better. And I'm very proud, as they are of the network, I mean of the data center, I'm very proud that they selected Sophos as their security partner, because frankly, Anthony has a very rich security background. He knows what he needs. He knows what he's looking for. He knows what he needs to protect you, his customers. And it's really awesome to have been the team that they chose to help them do that and accomplish those goals. So what we're going to talk about today, and I want it to be, feel free to speak up, ask questions anytime. I'm a little stream of consciousness. I have a presentation. I don't normally present when I come talk to customers. I don't turn on computers. I don't normally like to do slideshows because people stare at slideshows and they don't always hear the message. I always like to whiteboard things, and when you're doing PowerPoints and you're doing a one-on-many situation, it's kind of hard to do whiteboards, except that I figured out a way to do it in PowerPoint. It's very painstaking to animate every single thing you want to do, but it works fairly well when you have to present over a webinar or even in a large group like this. And I always start with the whiteboard. We're going to talk a lot today about next-gen threats, and we're going to talk about how Sophos helps customers solve the problem of next-gen threats with a very comprehensive solution. But I always like to start at a higher level. I go 10,000 feet up. Or in honor, I guess, of the Hawaii volcano, 30,000 feet up. Did you guys hear Ash 30,000 feet in the atmosphere today? Wow. It's amazing. So let's go to the 30,000 foot level and look down at Sophos and see who we are as a company, because I think as I kind of talk about the next-gen endpoint threat server and desktop, laptop side of the world, it's important for customers to understand who we are as a company and where we come from, and really how we couch this endpoint discussion. Because we really at Sophos offer comprehensive security solutions to our customers. We're not an endpoint company. Most people think of us as an antivirus company. We're a 33-year-old antivirus company, by the way. We've been around for a long time, but we're also in a lot of other businesses. And that's part of what comprehensive security means to us, is that we offer a lot of ways to protect our customers. And that protection comes in the form of offering a lot of products. So we have 2 divisions at Sophos. One's an end user division, and in our end user division, we talk about next-gen endpoint protection, mobile device management, encryption, and phishing. So phishing, by the way, not the I'm phishing you for nefarious reasons, obviously, but helping you teach your people not to click on everything that they get in their inbox. I don't click on anything in my inbox anymore. I don't accept LinkedIn invitations there. I go to LinkedIn now. I'm super paranoid because I got caught once. And then on the networking side of our business, we also offer a very comprehensive array of products. So next-gen firewall / UTM, wireless security, web security, and email security. So we're not a company that does one thing. We're a company that does 8 things, really. And frankly, there's a lot of competitors in the world today, primarily around this firewall space, who are starting to get into this space or have gotten into this space over the past few years. Many of you may use some of their products. They're very heavily weighted on this, and this is like, we should probably have some visibility into what's going on in the endpoint. So they went and acquired a product or created a product in some cases. At Sophos, our revenue, we just reported today, we're public, our revenue is about 50-50. Almost evenly split between endpoint and firewall. So we're a very balanced security company. We understand both sides of the world very, very well. Comprehensive security is good for better protection, but we also make it easier for you in the form of making security simple. Security is not simple at Scot's level or at our labs guys level, but at Dave, the sales guy level, and you guys who have to implement product level, we believe it should be simple. And so our our folks who are super smart and nerdy and sitting up in the labs work with really smart product guys to develop products and solutions that are easy for you to deploy and very easy for you to manage on a day-to-day basis that don't take an FTE sitting in front of a console the whole time, just fixing, dealing with alerts and fixing things that are going wrong. So we've built a lot of automation in, and we've built a lot of capabilities into the products that take care of stuff on its own, and I'm going to talk to you a bit about that. But one of the things that really helps make things simple is Sophos Central, and that is our cloud-managed platform. It's what these guys use to manage their customers. It's what all of our other MSP partners use to manage customers, and it's what our customers use today who don't have managed services to manage all of the products that you see on this page. With the exception of this, the firewall will be implemented in Sophos Central or imported into Sophos Central so you can manage it from there in about a month. So we're about a month away from having every single product manageable within a single pane of glass, hosted in the cloud, and really easy for you guys to jump around among products. So whatever you subscribe to will show up in your portal, and you'll manage those products there. So we can help you consolidate, and that's part of the simplicity message as well. I just said that. The last thing that really brings the protection story and the simplicity story together is something called Synchronized Security. This is what our competitors are trying to realize and achieve these days by coming up with some of these endpoint products that they're putting in place. We believe that security works better when it works as a system and not a bunch of disparate parts that you're managing in disparate consoles from separate vendors and having to call lots of different support numbers and deal with renewals and all that stuff. And by offering and having the ability to bring all of these different products to market and then having components, solutions talk directly to each other to share actionable, underline, threat intelligence with each other and then do the remediation, that piece to us is critical to having security perform better. With Synchronized Security, my firewall that sees a threat, for instance, ransomware got on one of your systems. Everything that you have in place missed it because nothing stops 100% of malware. Everybody agree with that, please? Yes, hopefully, yes. If somebody stands here and says we can stop 100% of malware, please run away. So eventually a ransomware gets on a system. It starts calling out to its command and control server to get its keys so it can do the encryption. Your firewall, everybody has Palo Alto or Cisco or Fortinet or whatever you have, right? Your firewall says, I don't think so. I've got malicious traffic detection. I can see you going to that known C2 and I'm going to stop it. At that point, your firewall is done. Your report tells you, who knows what you get from that incident, from that response. What does it report back to you? Scott, go ahead. Be a straight man. An IP address. An IP address. And what do you do with that? Assign somebody to it and have them go backtrack it or whatever the right technical jargon is to find out what machine that was on. And oh, by the way, when you find that machine, run over there with a malware-bytes USB stick and run malware-bytes because everything we have installed missed it. Let's do a scan from them and see if we can find it. Does that sound familiar? Minutes, hours, days? Depends on what your admin was working on at the time. What's his priority now? What were they doing before? What are they doing now? So with our story, our firewall, malicious traffic detection, sees the call out, cuts off that traffic obviously, but then takes that IP information and immediately communicates it to the endpoint and says, where the hell is this happening? And the endpoint goes, oh, I can tell you that. It's this machine and this user's logged in right now. And the firewall says, well, guess what? Instead of stopping that call out at the firewall to the C2, I'm just going to cut the machine off from the internet. So it's no longer talking to the internet while things are being resolved. Has anyone ever heard of Hitman Pro? No heads. But everybody knew malware-bytes when I said that, right? Okay, so Hitman Pro, it's like 50-50. Hitman Pro is the other malware-bytes in the industry. It's actually, in third-party tests, proven to be more effective, but whatever. We bought them. So we integrated a malware-bytes-like deep cleaning engine into our endpoint product. So now that the endpoint product has identified an infected machine and user, it can immediately kick off a deep clean like you would do with malware-bytes, except you're doing it manually and I'm doing it automatically. That machine gets cleaned and is back in a green checkmark state. Literally in the firewall, you see a green checkmark versus a red X. It goes from red X to green checkmark. The endpoint notifies the firewall that it's green checkmark, and the firewall says, cool, if your policy is set as such, I remove the holds, and that guy can now communicate out to the internet. Now, next month, we introduce something called Stonewalling that takes this a step further. When I cut that machine off from the internet at the firewall level, in June when we introduce Stonewalling, the firewall will also tell all the other systems on the network, that machine is infected, do not talk to him anymore until he's, so we are now killing east-west lateral communication so it can't spread. So I've cut it off from the internet, I've cut him off from talking to everybody else, I auto-clean him with the endpoint product, then I go back and let everything start flowing again. By the time you get an alert that you've had this issue, depending on the clean time, is this a Trojan or is it a piece of ransomware, is it something hard to clean, it might be done. Hey guys, you had this problem, it's okay, we isolated, we kept everything clean, we stopped communication from, or machines from talking laterally, we cleaned it, we put it back on the network, you're good to go. By the way, my next-gen endpoint product has root cause analysis, so now go take a deep dive at this piece of ransomware that got on your system, figure out how it got on your system, and figure out what steps you can take, firewall or other policies, to maybe prevent this from happening in the future. That's what security, comprehensive security means to us. There's no other vendor in the industry that can do that. There are plenty of firewall guys, you probably have them, that have a product that they sell on their firewall product that can identify a machine and maybe a user, I don't know, but they do not have the remediation capabilities that we have. So that's a big, this is where I go, okay, we're at 30,000 foot. The reason I want you to know all this is because as we're talking about next-gen endpoint, oh, by the way, I forget that's on there, that bullet, lower cost. But as we're talking about lower cost, not like this to compare this to somebody else or this to somebody else. I'm not always the lowest guy. I don't like talking about price and things. But when you start looking at this circle, I start looking a little bit like I'm getting my long, straight black hair with the curve at the end. I start looking like Flo. When you get your car and your boat and your home and your motorcycle and your RV from Flo and she gives you a name your own price tool. I will not give you a name your own price tool, but we do bundle pricing for customers that have multiple products, obviously. So that's where I talk about lower cost. So as we go into talking about next-gen endpoint security and server security, and specifically this product we have called Intercept X and how it solves the blah that's going on today, I think it's important that you understand the other half of the story. Because as you're making a decision on one product in the future, think about how this might be interesting as well. And by the way, this, even though it has these two letters, FW, if I go in and talk to a customer that loves their Palo Alto or their ASA, anybody cross their arms and love an ASA? I don't know. Palo Alto, yes, for sure. I run into that all the time. This, I don't use this term. I talk about my next-gen security appliance or my synchronized security appliance because while it does have firewall capabilities, it does not have to be a firewall. I have customers today putting it in my XG box, that's the product name, XG appliance in line, in bridge mode with a Palo Alto or a Cisco or a Fortinet or a SonicWall, I've probably got one of each, and doing all the stuff I just talked about here, taking advantage of that and not replacing this box. They may want to keep that Palo Alto forever and ever because it's the greatest thing ever or their boss loves it or used it at some other company and they can't get rid of it or whatever. Great, keep it. I've got a large data center customer that's doing that right now. They're never going to get rid of their Cisco stuff. Okay, I don't care. But this can help you on the endpoint side of things. I've got other customers who are tired of paying the renewals that come in for those expensive firewall products. And if this thing's sitting here as an intermediary inside of a Cisco edge, and then that SmartNet renewal comes in, and the guy throws up a little in his mouth when he sees it, and he says, I don't want to pay that again. Don't pay it. Move me to the edge, and you've got a next-gen firewall too. So it can work both ways. It doesn't have to be a firewall. It can be a synchronized security appliance. That make sense? Cool. So let's talk about stopping unknown threats, because this is a major focus of ours. I mean, I said about half and half of our revenue is firewall or network security versus endpoint security. We're going to focus on the endpoint side of things today because of all this stuff and the buzzwords, and you guys listen to the news and we hear about this all the time, right? So as you look at ransomware, that's been such a buzzword for a long time, and we have a killer solution for that, and we're going to talk about that. But some of the other advanced malware stuff and some of the Fireless stuff that's going on and some of the embedded malware and the process mitigation stuff and code caving and all these terms that I've had to learn about how hackers are doing things, something that we actually talk about active adversary now. That's a big term that we use about how the hackers are coming at you, not just what they're doing. But if you look at the shift in the landscape, these new things are really the predominant source of malware that's happening today. And if we look at surveys that have talked about ransomware and exploits and things, I'm going to show you some numbers. 54% of organizations report that they've been hit at least twice with ransomware in 1 year. So I don't know if you guys have experienced that. I'm not going to ask you to show hands. But if you haven't, you probably know somebody, one of your peers or somebody else who has. And you know that it's a major thing, especially after the WannaCry deal, which is now over a year old, but or about a year old, I think. But it still lingers. You know, that really woke a lot of people up, and frankly spiked a lot of companies' stock in the security world, ours included, at that time. Advanced threats. Most organizations, 83% of people agree that this is a difficult problem to stop. They don't know if they have they don't think they have the technology, or they know they don't have the technology in place today to deal with it. And then exploits. Almost no organizations, I mean, very, very few today have anti-exploit technology. Are you guys familiar with anti-exploit products or technologies? If you're not, we're going to talk about it today and why it's important. So I'll talk about that when I get there. This is a number that has gone up from, when I started 7 years ago, it was 75,000. And today it's 400,000, and I think this is last year's number. So it's probably up higher than that. 400,000 unique variants of malware that we see on a daily basis on average at Sophos in our labs. That's what our labs tracks. 75% of those are unique to your organization. So 75% of those variants are only delivered to a single organization. That means they're very good at creating variants very quickly so that we, the guys trying to stop them, can't just use signatures. We can't just use, we call them identities. We still use them. They're still effective in about 5% of the cases, but they're super cheap and easy for us to do. So it's it's still an effective tool where it's an effective tool. Did everybody lock their door when they left the house today? Yeah? Okay. Signature, right? If someone's walking by your house and thinks, I wonder if this guy's got a cool TV on the wall, checks the door and it's locked, they probably move on, right? That's prevention. And a lot of the EDR guys in the market, I shouldn't do quotes because it's a real thing, but the guys who just do endpoint detection and response, they're kind of like, you can't prevent stuff. We got to detect it and respond. And we go, yes, I agree. If that criminal is really determined to get into my house and the front door's locked and he smashes a window and goes in, I've got an alarm system. I will detect him. And it will call the police, respond. But I also locked my front door in case it's just a crime of convenience and he goes, I'll move to the next house. Did anyone see the news the other night? I live in Gilbert. Of the kids going down the street. A house at the end had a street cam set up, and he recorded this car driving down the street really slowly, and 4 kids running alongside it, checking everyone's car doors. And the ones that were locked, they just moved to the next one, and then they found one that wasn't locked, and they took everything out and put it in the car, and they went down an entire street, and this guy got it all on video. Prevention works sometimes, right? If they looked in and saw a wallet, they might have busted the window and taken it, but we also believe that prevention is effective. So let's talk about new logo, Intercept X, and the future of cybersecurity. So Intercept X is our new thing, the most effective because it includes and brings to bear more technologies to help fight things. So protecting against known and unknown threats. Stopping ransomware with a very cool technology we'll go into. Denying the attacker, this is the active adversary thing. Stopping the bad guys from using the tools that they use to do these bad things. So who's heard about deep learning or machine learning or artificial intelligence recently? Everybody in here, because it's like the buzzword, right? If you go to any security company's website, you're going to see one of those 3 terms, and you're going to see the word ransomware probably on the first page you get to. We're all talking about it. It's kind of ubiquitous. It's pervasive in technologies today. It's been used, frankly, for a while in different security products, but it's fairly new in terms of the hype in the endpoint world. And it's really trying to, deep learning. Deep learning, by the way, is a thing. I thought it was a marketing term we created to sound different than machine learning when we first started saying it, but it's not. In the world of data scientists and models, machine learning is here. Deep learning is here. It's a higher form of deep learning. It can accept more samples to train the engine. It's smaller in the engine. It requires fewer updates, and that's why we've used a deep learning engine. We actually acquired, well, I get into that here. Talking about our deep learning, it's really designed to determine if a file, an executable file, is malicious or benign. And that's really the focus of deep learning. I'll give you a sidebar here. There are vendors in the market today, a couple in particular, you may have seen their airport banners, one of them, who focus on machine learning / deep learning. And some of them claim outrageous things about how much malware they stop, like all of it. And deep learning is very important technology. It's a very effective technology at viewing executable malware and stopping unknown, never before seen executable malware. But executable malware comprises, depending on what thing you look at, somewhere between 45 and 50% of all malware that's hitting you. So a single product to address a single vector is great until you miss the other half of the problem. And that's why we've taken a deep learning engine and built it into a product with other technologies that help detect those other types of things, like fileless malware, like embedded malware or scripts or malicious scripts and things like that. So the deep learning side focuses on that never before seen. It blocks the malware before it can execute. So this is a pre-execution technology, not unlike a signature, which stops something before it executes, or a heuristics engine, which we also have built into the product. It does not rely on signatures. So Intercept X, the product, this is a technology within Intercept X. Intercept X, the product, can actually run on top of your existing antivirus solution because it's signatureless, and we have about 15% of our sales of this solution are actually installed on Symantec, McAfee, ESET, Trend, Silence, whoever. You know, we get a report. It tells us what other agents are on the machine, so we see what's on there. It classifies files as malicious or PUA, potentially unwanted, or there are potentially unwanted applications, right, in the world. There are legitimate applications when you use them legitimately that, if used maliciously, are not good. Keyloggers is a good example. It has a very, very small footprint. This engine is extremely small and does not require updating except, I think, every 6 weeks. And interestingly, our current engine that's running and doing the detection, the current deep learning engine, is running in front of the next version of the engine that's actually running in the product at the same time to look at what the current engine would do and make its decision on what it would have done, and then we move it forward and put the new engine right behind it. So these two are running simultaneously to have the next version of the engine learn from what the first version of the current version of the engine did. And it detects malware super quickly. So 20 milliseconds is crazy fast. And it also, and by the way, this is important because some of our competitors require a connection to the internet because some of the checks are done in the cloud. When I mentioned earlier Sophos Central, our cloud managed platform, that is a cloud management platform. Policy creation, reporting, not a cloud doing platform. We do not, this is a local client, everything is done locally. If we're hosted in AWS, if AWS has an outage, that's never had an outage. If AWS has an outage, you're protected. Your console won't know that you had a thing until AWS comes back up and it sends the logs up, but you were protected locally on the machine without having to worry about any kind of connection. And this is maybe the most important piece, I think, one of the most important pieces of this deep learning engine, the way we implement it, is there is no learning mode button. With other deep learning products, they have to learn. You have to install them. The manufacturers recommend that you run them for, I've heard, as few as 2 and as many as 6 or 8 months in a learning mode while they false pause out the wazoo and you figure out what's going on before you turn it into production mode and actually have it start doing good stuff, right? So we are turned on by default and in production mode right from the get-go. So there's no learning mode in this product. So that helps keep things simpler. So versus our competitors, smarter model, better scalability. Oh, cool story. I mentioned we've been an antivirus company. We started in 1985 as one of the first AV companies in the world. Next-gen endpoint vendors that have sprung up in the past 5 years have pointed at us and Symantec and Trend and McAfee and Kaspersky and said, those guys are ancient. Eugene Kaspersky used to work at Sophos Labs, by the way. So, we know those guys. We know all those guys. We share threat intelligence with them at a labs level and everything. And the security industry plays nicely together generally, except on the sales side. And, they would poke us and tell customers, if you're using Sophos, you're just getting signature-based detection, which there's a current next-gen vendor that still says that today. We've seen marketing information that says they only use signatures, and we're like, oh my God, you gotta have a little bit of truth in advertising. So what's funny about it is when we acquired this engine, by the way, we bought this from a company called Invincia. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Invincia. They started as a DARPA-funded project in DC from some 3-letter acronym agency. They were spun off to a company, and we bought them because they had the best engine in the industry. When we bought them, they, like the other machine learning companies in the industry, were downloading virus samples from VirusTotal. You guys familiar with VirusTotal? They have, I don't know, hundreds of thousands or millions. I don't know how many they have in there. When we acquired Invincia, their data scientists had a field day, because guess what we have on a server or servers somewhere? Essentially every known sample since 1985 in the world. I mean, we've got honeypots, we've got sample collection technologies. Over the years, we've collected samples. We took hundreds of millions of samples that we had in our database and dumped it into this engine and said, we're not dealing with what VirusTotal has, which is a subset. We just put as our marketing guys or product guys say, the entire known malware world into the engine to help train it to get it better. So it's ironic that being poo-pooed as an old-gen company actually helped us with our next-gen product when we acquired it because of all the sample stuff we had. There's a few quotes in here. I took out some of them. So advantages, number one, proven detection, and that's in third-party tests. It's validated on VirusTotal. We work both ways with them. Some of our competitors don't. They just take. They don't contribute. Performance stops notice quickly. We went over all that. I'm not going to go over it again. But I do want to show you this because I think this is cool. So in the world of predictive security, you want to be there, right? Most traditional endpoint products, we have a traditional endpoint product still too, by the way, it's part of my overall solution, perform in this area. So you're looking at false positives versus true positive kind of detection rates. Most next gens operate here, very high on the true positive side, but also very high on the false positive side because it's all pre-execution stuff. This is where we end up based on testing. So we have a more accurate and more effective model, both on the true positives, effective, and accurate on the reduction of lower side of false positives as well. So ransomware, we talked about the 54% a minute ago. 85% have either been hit or expect to be hit, so this is a huge problem. How many companies in here under 500 users or employees? A few, good. That's any of you feel immune from ransomware because you're small? Or? Hey, you laugh, but 100-user healthcare company in Vegas. I did this prezo one day to a bunch of sales reps at one of my partners, and one of the reps left and called this guy and said, "You got to get Intercept X. It's crazy." And the guy goes, "I got 100 users. What are the? Nobody's coming after me. I'm not a target." They're actually a big name company too that you would all recognize probably. And I don't know, 2 months later, he's calling his rep going, "We need help from a security organization. We don't know what to do." And they ended up having to pay a ransom because apparently he thought he was too small to have good backups as well. So they paid 100-person company, by the way. What's a normal, you guys know the average for ransoms? About $2,500. I don't know what Bitcoin is today, but back in the day it was like 1 Bitcoin. These guys got hit with 17. 100-person company. At the time it was about $3,000, so it was like a $2,000 something. It was like a $34,000 ransom. He didn't have backups. He didn't have a way to recover the data. He had to pay the ransom. The next day he bought Intercept X. Didn't help him for that one, but it helped him going forward, and he's stopped stuff since. Not only are small companies not immune from the problem, they're frankly softer targets to the bad guys because they know that a lot of people think they're immune. and or don't have the budgets or don't have the security presence of dedicated security person or even security-minded IT person to know that they need to go out and do this kind of stuff, right? And put these protections in place. That's the median cost of a ransomware attack. That includes downtime and recovery and sometimes paying the ransom of what people, I don't know if you guys saw the city of Atlanta story. I'm from Marietta, not Atlanta, suburb, but still, that story was insane. And their ransom was like 25 grand. And they refused to pay it, and it cost millions of dollars. So typically, if you're not familiar with ransomware, I kind of ran through the example in the Synchronized Security story back a minute ago, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. But basically, most ransomware today puts a file on the machine, then goes out to get its ransom keys. That way, they're not all together, so it's harder to detect for us. So they kind of break things up, right? And they bring the keys down, they do the encryption, they delete the ransomware itself, and then they pop up the message like, haha, I gotcha. We have this technology called CryptoGuard looks at files as they're being accessed, and if they're one of, 70 plus different types of files that can be encrypted, it takes a cache backup immediately. By the way, key thing here, because some of my competitors have rollback features as well, a lot of my competitors use shadow copies to take the backups. Guess what ransomware authors know about? Shadow copies. So they delete them. Yeah. They wipe them, encrypt them as well. So we use a proprietary Sophos backup technology to do a cache backup and put them in we use some free disk space on the hard drive. If the files are closed with no incident, the backups go away. It's constant turn until we see what we're looking for. And what we're looking for is the last thing that ransomware does on your system. It's snuck through the firewall via an email that a user clicked on and went to a URL and did something dumb and got this thing and the endpoint missed it. And at the very last second, it does what? It starts encrypting files rapidly. And we look for rapid file encryption of files. And when we see that, we halt the process. We do a quick investigation to see if this is a legitimate file encryption solution. I don't know if you remember on my circle at about right here, 4 o'clock, I am a encryption vendor. So I sell file encryption for companies that need to protect their sensitive data. So we know the difference in good and bad encryption. If we determine it to be bad, we kill the encryption, or the process, I mean. We use Sophos Clean, which is what Hitman Pro is now renamed. We thought Hitman was a little weird for a security name. So we call it Sophos Clean, a little more descriptive of what it does. Yes, we bought Hitman. Somebody who knew it. You weren't here earlier when I asked. We clean it up, and then we restore those files. By the time your user gets a pop-up in the bottom right here, you had ransomware, it's already been dealt with, and their files are still intact. That's the power of what we do with CryptoGuard. Now, some of my competitors, again, can tell a similar story. One of them uses shadow copies for sure, I know. One of them requires an internet connection for it to do the check to see if it's good or bad encryption. If you send out an RFP, most of you aren't probably big enough companies to send out an RFP, with at least one exception in the room who might send out an RFP someday. If you look at a checkbox that says, do you have ransomware protection with rollback, check, they can check that box. But when you start asking the harder questions and go deeper into the technologies, we are more comprehensive in how we address it. And that's a big part of what we talk about at Sophos. I just went through this whole thing. So with the exception of this piece, which is identify the root cause. And that's because we have the root cause analysis engine in Sophos Intercept X as well. So let's talk about stopping fileless attacks. This is the deny the hacker piece, or the deny the active adversary piece, where what the bad guys are doing today has detectable activity associated, specifically exploit kits. Do you know on the dark web that you guys, any budding hackers in here, aspiring hackers, you could go out on the dark web and buy what's called an exploit kit? There are about 26 known exploit techniques in the industry. You can go out on the dark web and buy an exploit kit. And by the way, if you're not really good at this and you're struggling with it at the beginning, some of them have 24/7 tech support. So you can call in and they will help you exploit whatever you do to create this thing that you're trying to do. I mean, it's a business like I'm a business. It's just two dudes who graduated from college, and one went to work for that group and one went to work for that group, and he's stopping and he's starting. So these exploits are becoming much more what's the word? Omniscient, out there, yeah, sophisticated and well, less sophisticated to do, more sophisticated in the way they work. Anybody can do it now, practically. So what we do, there's that number I said anywhere from 45 to 40 to 50. This stat says 41% are executables and not delivered as executables would be 59%. So a lot of machines don't require anything to touch a file, so you can't scan it when you're opening a file. There's a lot of ways that the hackers do things, and these exploit kits are kind of the start of them for a lot of cases. So we look for all 26 known exploits. We can detect all of them. And if we see one of them or a combination of them being used on a machine to do something, we stop it. Now, WannaCry. Does anybody remember what WannaCry was? Ultimately, what was it? Ransomware. Do you know remember how it got delivered? It got delivered via an exploit. There was an exploit in Windows 2000, Server 2003 and Windows XP. And by the way, there was a patch out for 3 months ahead of WannaCry that if you had applied the patch, you wouldn't have gotten the exploit. But that patching, we don't do patching, so that's a whole other thing. We believe in it. It's not easy, so we don't do it. The cool thing is our exploit prevention engine detects all 26. Now, back to that RFP. We're looking for an endpoint product that has exploit prevention. There's going to be a few different vendors that can check that box. One of them looks at 6 exploits. A big yellow one can detect on 12 exploits. We detect on 26. I've had customers that I'm in front of go, well, why don't the other guys do 26? And I go, I don't know, go ask them. I do all 26. You got to dig deeper into the technology, ask the right questions, and understand what you're getting when you're buying next-gen endpoint products. So most exploits, this is kind of an attack chain thing. I'm not going to go through this because it's long and detailed and nerdy. And I'm nerdy. I just, we don't have time to go into it. But basically, it says most attack chains take 2 or more techniques to work. There's different pieces of the compromise that have to happen, and most of them require a couple different injections or activities at different levels. So we have a lot of chances to catch it is the point. By being able to detect all 26, we've got a lot of chances. And these are some of the things that happen at those different levels. And this is basically a list of the 26 and the things that they are and the things that they, names that you may have heard before. I always liked this one, the VB script in God mode. So these are the kind of things that you may have heard of, that these are the attacks vectors that we can detect in the product. Another quote, we stopped 100% of exploit techniques. That's excellent. So the rest of Intercept X has to do with, we talked about the machine learning, the anti-exploit, and the anti-ransomware. I talked about the malware removable. I've mentioned the root cause analysis. I've actually got a slide on that. So when you go into root cause analysis and you say, okay, I got hit with one of these things. Thank you, Sophos, for stopping it. How the hell did this happen to me? Right? And you go look at it, you pull it up, and you can see here, in this example, this blue dot, well, you can't read it because it was down here. There's a key there. But the blue dot is the beacon event. This process, and if you hover over this in the real console, it tells you the name. This process we found to be malicious, bad, suspicious, whatever. That's where we detected something bad. That red dot, that process is actually the root cause that started the whole thing. And all this stuff happened in between. And I give you the ability, and here's the key for what each of those colors means: network connections, registry keys, processes, files. These 4 files were impacted by that process. These 2 registry keys were modified, created, whatever. I give you the ability, and I can't zoom in on the other side, but this right here says artifacts. The artifact section will blow out each of these and show you the list of every one of these processes, every one of these files, every one of these network connections that was made. So you can go in there and say, wow, I got a lot of data now on what happened in this attack. Sophos stopped it, cleaned it, recovered me, whatever, saved my files. But now I can dive into what happened, and maybe this will give me some information to go help understand how to fix things. And there is a next step section, because we will give you some information in a real attack on things steps you may be able to take if we can do the analysis and provide some input, we will, on, hey, maybe you should go do this. So that's a very helpful tool. And then we talked about malware removal, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. And then lastly, I talk about the heartbeat at the beginning. I probably should pull this slide out because it's kind of redundant, but it's also important, I think, for you to understand. You see some of these. We talked about this heartbeat between the firewall and the endpoint. Server is included in that. While server is endpoint security kind of under that umbrella. We have some unique server technologies. We have a lockdown capability. So if you're familiar with app whitelisting, we have that in the server side. So you can say, you know, this server over here that I have is my core business server that runs our core whatever we do at our company operational thing. And I don't want anything running on that but this one application. So you build out the server the way you want it, and you hit the lockdown button, and boom, nothing runs on that server but that and the processes associated with that. So that means if nothing else can run, no malware can run, no other things can run on it. So it's like super draconian lockdown, but it's very effective in some cases, right, where you might have a server that needs that. I didn't talk about the heartbeat between the encryption. I mentioned we have file encryption for those of you who might have sensitive information, healthcare, finance, PCI, whatever you want to protect, and you want to be able to transmit that data in ways that is convenient, like Dropbox. I can encrypt every file on your machine, 256 AES, put it in Dropbox. Dropbox gets breached, nobody cares. Put it on a USB stick, drop it in the parking lot, don't care. Those files are encrypted, 256, perpetually. And by the way, if my firewall notifies my endpoint that an endpoint's got an infection, or if the endpoint detects something on it that thinks it's infected, it can tell via security heartbeat the encryption solution, hey, that machine's infected, revoke its encryption keys. Because if I'm a hacker and I've stolen your credentials, Intercept X about 8 months ago added credential theft prevention too. Didn't mention that, wasn't on the slides, but there's a lot of other stuff in Intercept X. It's not like the big stuff, but we have credential theft prevention in there. So we're looking specifically for like memory scrapers and things like that, Mimikatz tools that people use. But the point is, I could tell this, if I'm a bad guy, have you guys ever, you may have seen it, I've actually seen videos or had people tell me about where they're sitting in front of their computer working and all of a sudden their mouse, the cursor starts moving around and files start opening and they're like, what the hell is going on? Like somebody's in there as them. Well, if somebody's in there as them and that key ring, that virtual key ring for the encryption solution's there and it has a key on it, they can open their files and see everything. And they can pull those files off. But with this, if I strip the encryption key, your user is going to call you and say, I can't open any of my files. It says I don't have access. And you're going to go, right, because Sophos found something, it's okay, it's cleaning it up. And when it's done, it will alert, check mark, green check mark, we're good, and it'll restore the keys from the backup on the files, the encryption server. So all automated remediation stuff. This goes back to Sophos Central, where I was talking about all the different products that we have. Are you guys familiar with phish threat technology? Or sorry, that's the name of our product. Phishing simulation and attack simulation. PhishMe or whatever they're called, Cofense or KnowBefore. If you're not, this is one of the most fun things I've ever sold in my life in 25 years of selling IT. It's hilarious. As soon as I tell an IT admin or director or VP or CISO that you can now create your own fake phishing campaigns and send them out to your employees, and when they click on them, you bust them and they have to take training, they literally, everybody gets a smile or giggles. It goes, oh. And we have customers who literally have a wall of shame. They have a whiteboard with the list of the people. First of all, they pre-fill out the list based on what they know is about to happen, and they're usually pretty accurate, apparently. In my firewall, we have something that people giggle about, because it's called a user threat quotient. It's in the bottom right section of my screen, and it's called UTQ, user threat quotient, and it has a list of names. And that list of names, depending on what you want to display, is these are the top 10 people that are about to screw you. These are the guys that are going to cause you problems. And it does that based on many things that it's looking at. Web surfing activity, files that they're opening, how many times have they been hit with viruses already. It looks at their user activity and it does a calculation using AI or whatever, and it goes, yeah, Anthony, right at the top of the list. Right at the top of the list. This is your trouble, dude. And when I tell IT folks, when I'm showing them the demo, they go, oh, that's going to be Bob. Like, we know who it is already. And I go, well, this is going to validate it. And when you click on Bob's name, it's going to take you to all the dashboard that shows you all the things that he's doing and why he's at the top. They inherently know who's at the top of the list because it's the dude that causes them the most problems. But this validates and shows them why. So they can start going, why does Bob keep going to these types of websites or these specific websites? We're going to cut those off, and that's going to lower him in the quotient, and we'll address the next dude on the list. So that user threat quotient, the phishing threat technology, the phish threat technology, all that stuff is designed to help you guys mold, shape, modify, control to some degree, hopefully, behavior. Like I said in the beginning, I don't click on anything. I won a $25 Amazon gift card recently for some contest we did internally presenting something. And they sent it to me, and I was like, yeah, whatever. And then we got a second email from marketing going, oh, by the way, this one, that was your actual $25 Amazon gift certificate. You can click on that, because the first time they did it a few months earlier, everyone hit our report as phishing button. Not a single rep opened their Amazon gift card, apparently. So IT was like, why? We keep getting all these Amazon gift card things in here. And the marketing team was notified, and they were like, oh, my God, those were real, guys. You got to go claim your money. Everybody goes, no, it's okay. But I did claim. So what makes it unique is the power of the plus. We stop known threats. That's kind of the foundation. That's part of the traditional endpoint product. We have the identities still. We have other technologies to stop stuff we obviously know about. I locked my front door, right? We stop ransomware. We stop unknown executables with the deep learning technology. We stop exploits in Fireless. We prevent the hackers from doing their thing with the anti-exploit technique. And it's really all those things combined into one. And oh, by the way, my endpoint product also has peripheral control. So things that we call reduce the attack surface. So I can give you control, not group policy, everybody gets one thing or nothing, not the light switch, but I have a third of my people who need to use USBs because customers bring us stuff and they need to view the files on those. Great, put it in read-only mode. I can do that. You can control that. These people have read-only access. The rest of you, nothing. The owner of the company, you can do whatever you want. You got full access. I've got a DLP engine in the product. So if the owner of the company is taking a sensitive file and putting it on that USB, the one person you gave write capabilities to, but it's a sensitive file, it's going to pop up and go, are you sure you want to do that? So he can go, oh, shoot, I wasn't thinking. You know what? I'll send that to myself with a secure email or something. Or put it on a secure removable storage device maybe. I've got application control. Who's help desk in here? Nobody? Well, somebody is. The first thing I do when I demonstrate application control, I have like 33 content control lists, hacking tools, security tools, games, cracking applications, da-da-da. I go straight down to toolbars. I click one button, and I just blocked 81 toolbars. The 81 most annoying things that you guys have to deal with. And then there's another button that says, and any others that Sophos adds to this list. So the Ask toolbar will never be downloaded again by whatever application your user is putting on their machine. If the Ask toolbar is willfully running on that browser, it will never run again. So I block installation, and I block already installed products or apps from ever running again. That's all built into our traditional endpoint. So we take all this next-gen stuff, and the known and the unknown and the hacker, and then we add that level, and web filtering at the endpoint, and malicious traffic detection. So that whole scenario I did with synchronized security, what if your user's on a laptop at home on their Cox network and you don't force, does anybody force VPN? You don't get to the internet unless you have VPN? You guys do? That's great. Most companies, organizations don't. So I put malicious traffic detection in an endpoint product. So when that user's at home and that ransomware starts to call out on their Cox network, or they're at Starbucks, or they're in here listening to this presentation, if I see it going to a known command and control server, I'm watching outbound calls from that laptop and I can stop it, just like the firewall can. So there's a lot of layers to this product. Blah, 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 best stuff, Gartner, Forrester, we're leaders. If anybody cares about Gartner, we're Magic Quadrant leaders in endpoint, firewall, and encryption. No other vendor in the industry is even in firewall and endpoint. Not a single one, much less encryption. So we do very well if you care about Gartner. If you don't care about Gartner, don't listen to anything I've said or anything they say because you might think we pay them. Try the product. If you try the product, I will earn your business. That's my last thing. Is I'm a sales guy, not an engineer. Hopefully you guys, you found this. This is so easy to talk about. Even a sales guy can do it. I would say caveman, but I think sales guy occupies a lower rung on the ladder than caveman to most IT folks anyway. Everything in the endpoint stuff that I presented is all in a single console. It's all a single product. I mean, it's a single SKU, single deployment. You push this all out as one thing. Intercept X that I talked about, I said it can run on top of any other antivirus product. So you could run this technology, Intercept X, on top of your whatever. And you could buy that as a license. But what most customers buy today, and we just created it about 3 months ago finally, is this piece, which is identities, the HIPS engine, I didn't even talk about that. All the reduce the attack surface stuff I just ran through. The old school traditional, we've had it forever product. That's that product and this product in a single SKU, single price, single download. It's one deployment. And all that stuff is managed in there. By the way, everything I just showed you, not app control, not peripheral, not DLP, and not web, because you have to create your own policies for that. But all the threat stuff, the anti-exploit, the deep learning, it's all turned on by default. If anybody wants to see it, I'm happy to stick around for a few minutes and pull up the console and show you. It's all, when you deploy my product, it's called threat protection. The policy is called threat protection. Everything's turned on by default. You don't have to do anything, and you're immediately protected. There is no tweaking, dialing, fixing, learning, blah. All the other stuff you have to do with the other guys. Some of my competitors force you to buy ProServe time. One of them, one of the big root cause guys, 2 weeks, I've heard. 10 days of ProServe you have to buy to install the product. Honestly, the biggest thing that we get is probably, we do start detecting things. And some of them can be false positives, especially with exploit prevention, because there are tools, there are things out there. I had a large urgent care facility here, headquartered here, that we just did business with in recently. And when they were testing, there was a plug-in to their Google Chrome. I can't remember what it was called. It was something I'd heard of, something in that every healthcare customer uses, and it was not running. It was not being allowed to run because our exploit prevention thought it was an exploit because of its behavior. He tested it for a couple weeks, called me, or tested it for a couple days, called me. A couple weeks later, I got a guy on the phone and I was going to show him how you create an exemption for it. By the time we did, we had already exempted it. We'd already heard reports from other customers. Apparently, we worked with the company and we made validated that it was legit, and we just put a global exemption in, so it's just in the product now. It doesn't block it. So that's the false positive / potentially unwanted application stuff is fairly typical for people to call and have an issue with. The communication problems in traditional, those of you who are running endpoint or antivirus products with a server client scenario, communication problems, they're horrible, right? Clients can't communicate with the server for some period of time for some reason. You don't know what's going on. Sometimes it's the server, sometimes it's the software. Usually it's the network, something on the network changed. That virtually goes away with a cloud managed product. Your visibility and control over your remote users is so enhanced with the cloud managed product, because now that user we were talking about earlier on Cox that just got hit with ransomware and tried to call out malicious traffic detected, stopped it. In a client server situation, except for you, Force VPN, because they're on your network, it's going to report to the server. But for everybody else, it's not going to report to the server. But in a cloud managed environment, it immediately sends an alert to you that you had an incident. So you can start doing whatever you do to remediate or investigate or whatever immediately. The other thing you have is that if you change policies, as you change policies, it doesn't matter what network your user is on, that policy is going to push from our cloud down to your user immediately. So they're under the guidance of that new employee. If you've got someone on vacation for a week and you change an app control policy, they're not going to pick that up till they're on your network again. So the immediacy of reporting and policy updating and everything is much better in the cloud. But most of the problems that we see on deployment are either deployment problems. Maybe the CRT found an instance of Bitdefender, that a new version we haven't seen before. That's okay. We'll get the GUID information from you out of the registry, and we'll add it to the tool for you, and then you go deploy the rest of the environment, and it works. So they're usually pretty basic things. Sophos Home, if you're not aware of it, 33 years as a antivirus company. Not until about 2.5 years ago did we introduce a home product. We never sold to users. In fact, we gave all of our customers free home use licenses. Now we give the whole world free home use licenses. And it ain't AVG free, guys. It's like our product. Not everything I just showed you, but the traditional endpoint side here, it's got that technology in it.
Better than the vast?
Yeah. Yes. And and we said we're not going to sell a product. We're just going to give people the free version. And then 6 months ago, we decided to sell a product apparently. And for $50, you can protect up to 10 computers in your home, and you get almost all that technology I showed you, including CryptoGuard, the anti-ransomware technology for your house. So take a look at this. This card doesn't have a code on it. It just tells you to go to home.sophos.com and sign up. So you could take a card to remind yourself or just remember, but it's free. And if for any of you who would like a really fun weekend project, our XG firewall that I've talked about that does firewall, deep packet inspection, IPS, IDS, malicious traffic detection, full web filtering, email security, and our firewall is the only one in the industry that has an integrated WAF. So anybody hosting their own web servers or web applications, sites or anything, I can harden those servers for you from the same box. That is free for home use for up to 50 IPs. So I have customers and partners that have stumbled upon that are customers or partners because they stumbled on a free firewall that they installed and loved and came to us and said, whoa, this is better than what we're using. 50 IPs. No, it's always been 50 since we bought Astaro. The network security engineer at the MGM Grand thought that was too few. I was like, what the heck are you doing at home? And he said, I have a little bit of a lab. I don't have a meeting till 2, and I need about half an hour to get there, so I'm happy to stick around for a while.